So what's required from you, and this is a standard going in when I talk about generically now with grants moving forward, it's about capacity building, it's about sustainability. Capacity building, that you're growing your sport, you're growing a club, and by that you're growing the sport and you're growing your area. Sustainability, you're going to be around as a football club in 5 years' time. Creating a profile for your business, and I'll use that word deliberately. You are a business as much as you're a football club, profit and loss, as I said earlier on. You're planning your grant application again, so you're putting together a process of how you're going to determine getting it done. Proactive, not reactive, that you have a grants calendar. You know what grants are coming up. You know the different funds. Yes, you're going to get push notifications from Football New South Wales, all right, and from your local government authority. But again, it's building your own grants calendar. Like, are we leaving money on the table? Are there grants we're missing out on that we should be applying for? Who's going to do the acquittal of the grant, the reporting, the evaluation, which are mandatory, that you're extrapolating from your project plan, business plan, and you have CapEx, which is your budget in the first instance to build it. And your application connects with me, communicates quite clearly what the ask is, and shows me how you're going to deliver on time and on budget. So that's your checklist as a club. Print it off, laminate it, stick it on the staff fridge. Okay, it's very much basically you're going to be doing that again and again and again every time you're doing a grant. What makes for a successful proposal? Well, a program of projects in the scope of the funding areas are giving. They're not going to give you more money than what they're prescribing, so don't ask for more. Sufficient documentation, supportive facts, as I said, and a project that reflects people's needs and organizational needs. Don't just talk about the club, talk about the end users, which are your players, which are your spectators, which are your community. Okay. Why are projects declined? I could spend all evening on this. I've tried to synopsize it down to 2 slides, but these are some of the reasons why we knock you out in terms of eligibility in round 1. Now, a lot of this, when you read through it, this is common sense, right? There's nothing here that's mystifying. So just stick to the KISS principle, just keep it simple, all right? People just really expand too much, right? They write the longest sentences known to man when they write a grant application, right? Grant sentences should be no longer than 20 words. I'm looking for impact statements every time you answer a question. The first 20 words is where it's won or lost in terms of the mindset of the assessor. It has to be there or it's not there on the page. So you can't go on a long preamble, basically, okay? You got to keep it nice and tight, basically. So I'm looking for those impact statements. I'm looking for positive language. We are, we will, rather than if you give the money to us, something might happen with it, maybe. I don't want to see that, okay? And again, some of the other points why we actually knock you back. Last 2 are the big ones, are usually insufficient evidence. People aren't substantiating the claim or substantiating the ask, and evaluation, that you're actually in successfully receipt of the funding and I'm chasing you down for an evaluation of it 6 months or 12 months later and you still haven't provided for me. It's a massive bugbear for government. This is relationship management 101. It's not the only grant you're going to be applying forever from New South Wales Office of Sport. Make sure you sustain that relationship with them moving forward. Measuring outcomes is something we're looking for more and more in grants these days in terms of your goal statement or objective statement, which are your mission statement or your vision statement of your club. What you're there to achieve, what you're there to do for your community, what you're there for the football cohort, for the game of football itself. The activities and tasks that are necessary to accomplish the objective, benefits or results of each objective that leads to measuring outcomes, and performance indicators of success. How can you quantify and qualify to me that you've articulately thought about this in a proactive manner rather than saying, oh, look, there's money available, let's just apply for it. What are we going to apply for? I don't know, put something together in an ad hoc fashion, in a haphazard fashion, and surely we'll get the money. Well, you might actually get the money, but then you have to deliver against the money. And you don't want to be in that position where they go, coming a year later going, why haven't you spent that money outside of COVID circumstances? Okay. So again, a well-written grant application, clear, concise, compelling, short, succinct, and to the point. That's a well-written grant application. Again, what they're trying to do is what you're trying to do. You got to be singing from the same hymn sheet as New South Wales Office of Sport. So again, if you feel that you're not up to it this time in terms of applying, and I'd still encourage you to apply as best you can to your capabilities in the next 2 weeks, but actually weigh it up objectively and say, look, I'm better off waiting the next year. I can circle the wagons, I can resource it better, I can get all the things I need. This is expectation they're asking me for. If I have a couple of more months to do it, I can actually achieve it. That could be the best decision for your football club in a long time. Again, how do they collaborate with others? The government don't like you being a silo. They like partnerships, they like collaborations. Now that's with other clubs, with your association, with Football New South Wales. All right. Again, collaborations. Whether you like it or not, this is the way moving forward. This is the mandate. Do not be a silo. Even though you could be a club that's been here for 50 years or 100 years, doesn't make a difference. It could be a club that's here for 2 years. How are you partnering within the community, with other sports, with other community groups, with local government authorities, other state government agencies, but principally your own sector. So the need for funding, talk about the commercial potential, talk about the investment, that if you get the money, it's going to add great benefits to the community. The football community first and foremost, but obviously the wider community as best you can as well, and trying to make it translatable. Talk about VFM, value for money. The other acronym there, VFM, what's in it for me? Where can I leverage my government logo, my brand, big check moment, photo opportunity with the politician? They're concerned about that as well. You got to give them that. Market opportunity, again, how you can actually distinguish that this is going to help me grow as a club. Management capability, they're now looking at the caliber of people on your committee or your management team or on your board. That the people know how to manage money, have experience, qualifications, know-how, and have delivered similar projects to this on time and on budget. So let me shatter the illusion here. I don't just judge you on your grant application, all right? I may, if I look at your grant application, go off and look at the club website, club Facebook page, club Instagram page, club Twitter account, your LinkedIn profile. I will Google you to make sure you're legit. Okay, so you got to substantiate that the narrative that's on the website is the same narrative I'm seeing in the grant application. And local, state, or national benefits, that knock-on effect to this sport. What's the transitory learning, or what's the transitory fee? Can promote your club, and this is where you got to see it as a value for your club. Those clubs that have been successful recipients in previous funding rounds have been profiled by New South Wales Office of Sport. A news story is being done about them. They've been promoted. That's free publicity for your club. You're never going to get a better PR. Okay. So again, it's about doing it diligently, doing it right, because the translatable benefits are huge for you. So know the program rules, know the grant rules, plan your application, be creative but honest. Don't say you can do the project in 12 months when it's going to take you 18 months to do it. Research successful grants. Look at the last round of funding recipients and who they funded in the past for what projects and how much. It's a good indicative guide as to what they like to fund. Provide the information required, no more than less, right? That's one of the hardest challenges in writing a grant, you know, because it's compulsion to keep on writing. No, less is more. Answer the question you're asked, not what you think you're asked, and no superfluous information, right? It's very much, again, it's either on the page or it's not on the page. I'm not going to fill in the gaps, basically, as an Office of Sport employee, okay, or as an assessor. Why am I talking about social media and grants? Going back to my previous point, that I may actually look at you in some way, shape, or form. So you need to justify to me that you have a presence out there in the community, and I will trail through your Facebook posts to see that your under 9s team and your under 18s girls team, basically, and your over 35s. I'm showing, yeah, this club's got community impact. This club's going places. This club's not only winning on the pitch, but winning off the pitch. Okay. So you don't have to use all of these. I'm just giving you an indicative, right? There's no obligation to use every single one. But I work with clubs that use a lot of these. Right, particularly video, particularly they have their own dedicated YouTube channel, 30 seconds to 3 minutes in duration. They're everything from coaching clinics to drone footage of the club, to a day in the life of the club, to interviews with players, staff, volunteers in the club. Just shows the club as the intuitive nature to think off the pitch as much as on the pitch. And that's what we guide them and help them through, basically, in terms of that narrative. So grants is telling a story, painting a picture with words. Yes, it is. So get away from doing the last minute application and being there 4:55 p.m. or in this case, 11:55 a.m. and pressing send and hoping for the best. Be proactive rather than reactive. Have a grants calendar. It's going to be a saving grace for you. Know what grants are coming up so you can plan for them accordingly. People can only help you if they know you exist. Profile, profile, profile. So have a relationship. If you learn anything again from tonight in terms of moving forward with the Office of Sport and forward with Daniel from Football New South Wales, it's have a relationship with these people. They're there to help you. They're there to make you a better club at the end of the day. So work with them, distinguish those professional relationships moving forward, and cultivate that relationship. Make sure it's happening on an ongoing basis. Work with our connectors. Again, I'm back to collaboration, right? They want to see this more and more all the time. Other football clubs in the first instance, then your association, then your governing body, then other sporting entities, your local government authority, community groups. You know, I got football clubs partnering with Scouts, Girl Guides, PCYC. Indicatively, that's what I love to see. Okay. Internal and external resourcing. All right, that you have the right people to write the grant application. And again, something to be mindful of, do you need to bring in a grants writer or a grants consultant in some way, shape, or form? That's down to you, the decision at the end of the day. What's going to add better value to the application? And the local, state, or federal current affairs being across, as I've given you some of the referencing already in this documentation. So when you get the recording, go back and look at all those sources and resources, and even there on the grant application itself to show you, well, I expect you to be reading these policies and programs and plans that we put out as New South Wales Office of Sport, let alone Football New South Wales, let alone football in general, and the community. But your first template really, and this is what really you're building and designing your grant around, is who are we, what do we do, where do we do it, when do we do it, why do we do it, and how much do we want for it? Because in some way, shape, or form, you're answering those questions in a grant application. That's your first template you're sliding across the table to the committee. All right, and you start from that. And then you talk about how your grant's going to be an investment rather than a gift. I give grants funding or award grants funding when I've been on assessment panels for solutions, not problems. I don't give money for problems. Don't tell me there's a problem in the club. Tell me the problem is a problem in the club to 10 or 20% bandwidth, then 80% is the solution. Then I'll give you the grants funding. Don't highlight the problem without having highlighted the solution, but don't just highlight basically the problem. Provide a realistic assessment of the urgency. I know you needed the money yesterday. I know you could start the project yesterday, but this will be obviously, we're closing off on the 8th of October. There'll be a month turnaround time, usually indicatively, to assess this. Notifications go out in November. Some clubs may decide to start in December if they're getting the dispensation to do so. Others will wait until the new year. That's the time frame you're looking at the end of the day, basically. So make sure you're cognizant of that in terms of expectation from the funding body. Project rationale is becoming a standalone section in grants now as well. Clearly state why the project's needed. As I said, it's always about why. Grants applications are always about answering the question why. You got to justify it to them. Why? Why you as a club? Why here? Why now? Why in this geographical area? Why for this club? What are we showing as a club? What are we doing as a club that's progressive in mindset and developing the code? And again, these are some of the bullet points that I would suggest to you that you need to distinguish basically in the why. Okay. You can say a lot, but you have to choose deliberately what you're going to say in a grant application, because you have not only a word count anymore, you have a character count. In fact, you're writing a glorified tweet is what you're writing in a grant application, because you're limited in what you can say in terms of the narrative and the amount of words. Okay. It has to fit in with local planning. That's local government planning, Football New South Wales planning. Okay. Show that you are part of a wider remit and you understand that and you're part to play in that and what you're doing in that. Okay. Whether it be a development from a development point of view or within the growth of the game point of view. And use that compatibility and consultation in your argument to justify the argument as well. Project timing is just a test of time management and project management. They want to see that you have the processes, you're bringing in the right people to help you. You understand how to manage a program of this size and work. You've done so before. What's the equivocal? Show me a case study, drop names that you've done this before, with whom and for what value and how much. And that you have a process to manage this in terms of not only building it, but running it at the end of the day. Okay, and that's their biggest worry, that they're going to give you money, you're going to build it, and it becomes redundant very fast through lack of usage, lack of maintenance, lack of upgrade when need be in years to come. That's what they're concerned about. So they want to see that in your plan, that you have that nous and knowledge to that. Budget, I just don't want any misappropriation of funding. No, no artificial budget inflation here, right? It costs what it costs. That's it. Don't have to round out the figures or anything like that. It costs what it costs, right? So get the quotes, substantiate it, basically look at what they're willing to pay for, what they're not willing to pay for at the end of the day. Generally speaking, the lower percentage sought, the more chance you have of getting the funding, because I got to share this amount of money, this bucket load of cash, as it's perceived to be amongst all sporting codes across the whole of New South Wales. And I got to make sure there's proportional dispensation. I got to make sure basically that everyone gets a good shot at it. That doesn't mean, it just means all that money is not just for you. So you got to marginalize the ask to a certain degree and meet them in the middle. And again, look at cost offsetting. It's a big thing. Don't put everything in as a budgetary line item. They're not going to pay for everything. They won't pay for what we call filling the stationery cabinet, which is running costs of the club, right? So I'm not going to pay for heating or electricity or water or transport unless it's really project related. In this case, it isn't necessarily. So those running costs now, right? So again, you got to look at a way of offsetting those costs, and I've just given an indicative there. But this is the big one, certainly, is that you're leading into a multi-year project as you are, that you factor in the inflation and factor in salary increases as well, if there is going to be a component in this, because one of the questions that's asked within this is, are you going to create any jobs out of this project, right? Jobs, right? Main concern for government all the time. So what jobs are usually come in the construction phase? Obviously, without doubt, you have to state that. That's very much the case, and that's the salary that you have to look at. But again, if there's going to be an ongoing maintenance cost, basically, are you optimizing that with your own budgetary contribution rather than saying, government, you pay it? They're not going to take too favorable to that. So again, should relate to the project, not to the running costs of the club. Otherwise, I see it as artificial budget inflation, and you come up with budget blowouts and not where we want to be at the end of the day. Okay, I need justification for every dollar that's been put in there. And again, don't do it retrospectively. You've started even in stage 1 of this project already. Then we're going to make it null and void. They want to be there at the start. As I said, shovel ready. So if you've already started this and this is stage 2 of the project, it's going to be hard to get justification for it at the end of the day. And obviously don't start anything until you sign the contract of agreement as well. And make sure you read the contract of agreement, get your lawyer to read through the contract of agreement, because it may have deviated from actually the terms and conditions specified in the first instance. Methodology. All I want is that last bullet point. There should be a clear pathway linking individual stages of your project design and implementation. A leads to B, leads to C, leads to D. A does not lead to E. No shortcuts, no cutting corners. I don't want to see any of that. Okay? Spell it out for me. Show me indicatively how it's going to work. That's what I want to see. Now, I wanted to share a project plan with you. This is one of 5 that I give my clients. And again, project title, optimally it's 5 words. That's why it's less than 10 words. Your project summary, yes, all of these in 100 words. The purpose of the project, the scope of the project, the people involved in the project, financials, timescales, risks, all in your project summary, 100 words. Because your full project scope or description is 1,000 words, including all of that. Remember, you got to design the project first before doing the ask. So you got to come up with a project and what you're seeking to do to justify it. So the summary comes first with 100 words, and then you got 1,000 words indicatively. And you'll extrapolate from this to populate the answers in your grant application. Okay. 7 key principles of Commonwealth Government grants. Look how much they love the words effective and efficient in Canberra. But if you abide by these 7 commandments, as we call them in the grants game, you're going to do quite well in any grant, not just this grant. This is what they want to see quintessentially in all grants, no matter what grant you're applying for. Understanding the terminology, applying the terminology in your rhetoric and your response, and subscribing to what they're mandating in terms of financial appropriations and value for money. And saying value for money, there it is, point number 7. Governance is a big one. They're really unsure of a lot of sporting entities in terms of their lack of understanding around governance, risk management, probity, transparency. Give them the assurance that you're across it. In some instances, moving forward, not necessarily in this grant, but they'll ask for a copy of your risk management plan or risk management policy within your club or association. Make sure you have one, and make sure you have good standards of governance as well, because you may be tested moving forward on those. My top 10 tips: make it about your reader, make it about them. Okay. Talk about what you're going to achieve for them as much as you're going to achieve for the great code of football and for the club. Answer the question. Blatantly honest, but a lot of people talk around the subject rather than at the subject. Answer the question. Try not to waffle, right? No wordology, okay? Make it clear what's in it for them, the return on investment on the money. Be direct in the way you answer the questions. Less is more in terms of your narrative. Avoid sweeping statements. Give great examples of how you've done similar projects in the past to great worth and value. Remember, looks can kill, but it looks like a sloppy application is written by a sloppy applicant, as in poorly written. Jog their memory if you've been in receipt of funding from them in the past, remind them what a great job you did with that funding and with the project you did, and make it word perfect. Old journalistic adage, count your words and make your words count.